Hello again, Chadders here. Not been around for a while, but we've got a nice engine to show you today. This is the Frog 249BB, as it says on the side, and the red fins give it away as being a 249BB modified, MOD they call it. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. This was made by the famous Frog company in around 55, or at least it began production in about 55. It was probably groundbreaking for Frog in that it was the first engine designed by one of their new designers called George Fletcher, and he looked at the Frog engines made up to that point, up to his arrival, and decided they weren't really up to scratch. Frog engines were cheap, mass-produced, good enough for beginners and kids, but nothing very serious. Fletcher came along and decided that the reason that Frogs were allegedly short-lived was that they were using hard pistons and soft liners, or softer liners. Now, apparently the way to reduce wear is to have two materials of different hardness. Conventionally, you would have a hard liner and a softer piston, as exemplified in the modern ABC or ABC setup, which would be an aluminium piston, soft, brass with chrome liner, very hard. Anyway, Fletch, bless him, said, right, we're going to have hard liners, softer pistons, and this, I think, was the first engine that he designed with that setup. But it was not the only change. You can see it's quite a short, squat little fella. It's actually over square. The stroke is not as much as the bore. So it does rev rather splendidly. This has got a 7x4 prop on it, and it is quite exceptional in terms of revving. Double bore race, one at the back, one at the front, and the other novelty of this engine is that at the front, whoops, we have an interesting hard rubber cover which protects the front, possibly stops fuel spurting out because it's got quite a runny nose, but in crash landings it would keep the dirt out of the engine. The other thing is, when it is reviewed, or another thing, sorry, I'm trying to break it, when it was reviewed by the usual suspects, they were very, very complimentary about the engine's handling characteristics, possibly the best handling engine they'd come across. It would start easily, it would swing big props, scream on small props, and at the time it was probably the most powerful mass-produced, because it was mass-produced, 2.49. It pushed out something close to 0.3 of brake horsepower. But this wasn't enough for our friends, our cousins across the pond, who wanted a bit more oomph. So George Fletcher was given the job of getting some more oomph out of this. He redesigned the porting, possibly the timing slightly, and people at the time said, well, you've made it worse, George, old son. But in fact, the tests showed that he hadn't. He'd made it better. And it pushed out over 0.3, approaching, I think, the power of an Oliver, which for a mass-produced engine in the 50s was very good. One thing, it was designed with a fair bit of end play. I think you can see that. I don't like that because it slaps around when you start him, or at least when you flick it. But I'm told that's normal for the engine and it's perfectly okay. Some of the enthusiasts weren't very keen on the location of the mounting holes. They were too far forward for some reason. I don't know why, but that was mentioned. Frog, I think at some point, well, at some point it went through all various strictures. At some point, these engines were modified, were made, I beg your pardon, by DC in the Isle of Man. Some had serial numbers, some did not. But this one hasn't a serial number, but it does say on it somewhere made in England. Does that exclude the Isle of Man? I don't know. There we are, Froggy. If you want any more information on this, and I've given you just a teaser, I can do no better than refer you to, once again, to the guru of engine writing, Adrian Duncan. I can never remember his website, Model Engine News, something like that. Google it, you'll find it. He has 2 articles, one on Frog, the history of the company and so on, and one on the 249s, or possibly even the 249 BB. It's well worth a read. It'll tell you all sorts of interesting facts, and like a lot of his articles, he discovers one and modifies it and makes it outperform anything else of the size. However, that's quite enough from me for today, so enjoy the rest of this lovely autumn. Bye bye.